everyone, I am Nu-Trix, the synth guy, and today we're talking about the latest soft synth from Bleass. If you don't know Bleass, well, you have to listen. If you know Bleass, you want to listen, you know already. Bleass has been around making software for iOS and Mac now for a little time, and they're really cool. They're creating software that are fun to play with, that sounds really nice. I mean, the texture that they're able to produce is really a nice sounding texture. And all of their apps that they have, some of them are effects and others are synthesizers. What we're talking today is the latest synthesizer. It's called Megalit. What is Megalit? It's basically a software synthesizer built on what they made for Alpha and Omega and Monolith. Basically, it's kind of a mega version of the monolith. You understand me? What is Megalit? Well, it's a mix of some FM synthesizer. There's some of the classic, subtractive filters, tons of modulation, and oscillators that now are basically wavetables. So you have wavetables to start with, you have FM to modify them, you have tons of effects to play with, and you have modulation, and really cool way of using it. So plus you've got motion sequencer and an arpeggiator and effects. It's just like it's all into one little app. And they're able to do that in a very sensible way of using it. So let's actually go into the screen itself and let's just play with some of the sounds. At the top, you have the top layer here. You have the tempo. You have play if you want to use with the sequence in this case, or with the modulation, internal modulation. You've got audio and MIDI. You can go and edit. So these are the utilities if you want. You get share the presets, you can get more presets, you can buy some more. Then the second line is basically the browser of the presets. You get different ways of looking at the screen. Either you want to go full performance mode, you've got two keyboards you can play with, and on the side you've got control for each of the keyboards, so you can change the scale. You want to use MPE, or in a way of MPE. You want to scroll, so around the keys. You want to hold the keys, sustain basically. So you can actually play the two keyboards at the same time if you want, or just one full screen, or one with the panel itself. If you look at the top section of the panel, you've got these tabs to play with. So the first one is performance. So you usually would be into this one if you want to think about how Megalit will react to the way people play it. So for example, if I play this on the screen, you see? So keyboard will show me, keyboard will show me that I'm going up the keys, where the slide will show me that I'm sliding up or down. So then it's going to be the question about how do you want this to affect the sound. So again, you can say the slide, I want it to affect, I don't know, the volume, and this is the amount. So if I slide up, bring down the volume, bring up the volume. So you can really address and assign how the performance that you're going to do will affect the synthesizer. And then you get modulation wheels. So this you need to have you see, I've got this controller here, my Nectar controller. So if you go up and down, you're going to see the modulation wheel go up and down. And if you go side to side, in this case, I'm going to... And now if I press on the keys, now it's note on. So you've got a separate control if you're playing on the screen, the keyboard on the screen, or if you play through MIDI coming in. So really interesting. Okay. And then you also have a XY. So really this window is aimed at playing and how the rest of the synthesis will respond to how you play. So second tab is the general information. You get the output, the volume, the master volume if you want. You get the voices. Do you want it to use in poly mode or monophonic? So turn it off. It's going to be monophonic. You want it to be retriggered or not. Retrigger is basically if you turn it off, you're going to be in legato mode. You get the amount of vibrato, because this is for the vibrato. The glide, the pitch bend, how much you want the pitch bend to affect. So you can play with all these values until you're at where you want. You have the unison mode. How many voices you want in unison. Actually, I should use a init sound, just an init sound. The 3 oscillators playing, okay. Everything's off, no effects. So this is basically the init sound. Okay, so if I go into general, and I say I want to have more than one voice, I can say the oscillator 1 is in unison mode, the 2 and the 3 also. We can put it stereo, we can play with the tune. And what's interesting is you can say, I'm just going to want to put the oscillator 1 into unison mode, go back to oscillator 1, maybe I want this to be an octave higher. This one is it's in unison, but the oscillator 2 is not. So it creates, again, it's an interesting way of playing with them to create width. I'm going to turn it off for now. FM, well, you can have FM between 1. So you have this FM source in this case, and you can assign it to oscillator 1. To 2 and to 3. So you have, it's like one FM sent to all of them or a separate one. So you could have FM on the second one, unison on the first one. So it's having two really different synthesizer into one box, because you've got the unison one for the oscillator 1, which is 5 voices, and the FM synth being oscillator 2. And the third one could be just a sub playing under everything. So really interesting in the way that with very simple decision, this makes it for a very flexible synthesizer. And it just works. Next, you've got the arpeggiator, the same one that they have in all of the different Bleass apps. So you've got, of course, you can turn it on and off. You can say how many octave it's going to affect, the gate length of each of the note, the repeat of the note. No up, down, up and down, random. You want it to be free running, you want it to be in sync, or you want to be with the beat. You know. Let's go to oscillators. You have oscillator 1, and then you can click at the top here and decide the different waveform you're going to play with. So you can just like. If you want to hear them, you get the gain here. Bring them down. Right now I only hear this one. So I hear only this one. So it's a really fun and weird way to play with the sound. You've got this kind of sample. You can play, so it's a wavetable basically. You can play with it, but it's a very flexible wavetable when you can actually kind of play with the width if you want. It's kind of a pulse width modulation of the wavetable. And again, right now I'm just doing it by hand, but you could assign modulation to this. That's the cool, totally freaky part of this synthesizer. Like all that they're doing, they have these really flexible modulation options. Again, this other sound, or like this. Okay, so you've got a ton of these really cool options here. And look at the top here. You have the favorite of Dean's favorite waveform 1. So this is Dean from Electronic Sounds. And that's why when you go into presets, one of the option is Electronic Sound Preset Pack. So you're gonna have to play with that. Oscillator 1, Oscillator 2, you got the octave, the tuning, the fine tuning, the gain. So this, normal stuff, but it's these two controllers are really cool. The 3D from left to right and the top to bottom was basically kind of the evolution of the wavetable, if you want. Same thing here, if I bring the volume up. So really cool. Really, well, it does what it's supposed to. Then you got a noise, and the noise can be controlled with low pass and high pass, basically, or high pass with low pass. So you can really have a noise that is very specifically. So the noise is really cool, enough control over it to make it nice. And you have the Oscillator 3, which has a couple of choices of, I would say, traditional waveforms, the kind of analog waveforms to play with. And you get the amplitude of the three of them. So the three of them, actually the four of them, including the noise, are combined into one single sound after all these combinations, and then it sends through the VCA with the amplitude envelope here. Then you get a drive, filter, all the timbre control, I would say. What's cool about it, you've got a general algorithm. So you want to combine all of them into this, or you want them to be separate, or you want them to be four of them separate. And that's really interesting because it means that you can have distortion only on Oscillator 3 if you want. The wave shaper only on Oscillator 3. You can have the crusher on Oscillator 2, and you could have the filter, the high pass, or the low pass on Oscillator 1 only. So it makes for very complex sounds. Remember, if you add this with the fact that, let's say, one of them can be unison, the other one can be with FM, so it just stacks up to a lot of movement and complexity in the sounds. So really interesting. Again, the wave shaper, the crusher, the low pass, the high pass, all of these, they're part of the rest of the arsenal of tools that you find in the other Bleass, like the Omega and the Alpha, which I talked about. So look there or look down there for the other links. So they're just bringing it back in. But what's cool is these four controls here. So you really can control them separately. It opens a lot of how you can do it. And by default, you've got control from the keyboard and the envelope, which is very normal to have. Effects, you get a compressor, you have a delay, you've got a reverb. All of them, the compressor is interesting because you get a multi-band compressor. You can compress the low, the mid, the high separately. So you get the modulation. Now, this is where it comes to be really interesting. Modulation, you say, well, I want to have from Oscillator 1, I want to have the wavetable position, and I'm going to play with that. Let's go back to Oscillator 1. Here you got the modulation control here. That slowly, and this one I want to send it to modulation 1, the fold. So really cool in the way this can become something. So this is really interesting. The modulation is really powerful. The list of modulation destination is just humongous. Almost everything in it can be controlled. So this is really, really what I like about the Bleass software. The capacity of modulation is amazing. And it sounds good. We can have an offset if you want. So you get two destinations for each, but you also have 2 pages of that. So you get 4 LFOs and 2 envelopes. So really, really cool. The amount of controls is really interesting. Plus, you've got a motion sequencer. Again, something that is part of all the Bleass app. So the motion sequencer is what it is. It's a sequencer, but to control values of a controller. You have 2 destinations you can send to. Again, same list of destination. You can have the length of how many steps you want to use, the randomness of the steps, and the amount of each. So the amount of the destination, you want it to be looped or not. You want the resolution to change, the sync mode, the beat mode, the jump note, note reset, ARP reset, and you can play with the type of shape of each of them. If you want it to be steps, then you would go like this. So these are steps. And you want to send it to pitch, then you send it to pitch. So it becomes a step sequencer playing the notes. So it's really just a question of how you want to use it. This is the logic of what it is. Now let's actually listen to this in context of a song. That's it. That's the Bleass Megalit Synth in a nutshell. It's really fun. You've got this, I would say, digital texture to it because of the wavetable and the FM. So you got that nasty, aggressive digital tone, but still you have the smooth filter that sounds more analog, plus tons of effects. And It's really a complex synthesizer in a very simple package, and not so difficult to use and learn because everything is really hands-on. You can play, so it's cool. Again, Bleass, you did a good job. Keep that, and don't forget, this is for iPad, iOS, and desktop also. So for anybody who does like me, work on the iPad, continue on the Mac, go back to the iPad, go back to the Mac, and switch between the two as much as I can. Having the same software in the both places is always a huge plus. So thank you very much for that, Bleass. Make more music, have fun, see you soon. Cheers.